My husband Jason and I were expecting our second baby, and so we came to the hospital. She was born with some complications, rushed to the neonatal intensive care unit. The next 7 days, she received antibiotics. Eden was discharged from the hospital.
Kiss her, Bethany. Ooh, she's hot, just like Bethany.
That evening, Jason told me that he did not feel well. I asked him to lay on the floor. He noticed that Jason had stopped breathing, started to perform CPR. I'm told I performed CPR for 7 minutes. I remember that my daughter, Bethany, was behind the chair, my 2-year-old, and Eden was laying on the floor right beside me. Jason was dying.
When we walked in, the paramedics started talking to me, saying that they shocked him one time. At that time, his heart went back to a normal rhythm.
There was a pulse and there was respirations, but the fact that he wasn't responding to anything, you know, I kind of thought, I don't know how it's going to turn out.
If you have cardiac arrest outside a hospital setting, I believe the statistic is you have less than a 5% chance, or only about a 5% chance of surviving it.
Many people that have cardiac arrest in the field with bystander CPR end up with cognitive deficits from oxygen deprivation, even with the best CPR.
I remember being pointed to the room where Buffy and the family and friends were, and there was quite a few people there already, and they kept coming.
And I remember there being just people around the perimeter of the room, and a few people would pray and lead and encourage the rest of us.
There was definitely some desperation in our prayers and in trying to really understand what was going on. And our prayer was that God's timing and God's plan wasn't done with Jason.
Jason was determined to have a condition called Brugada's syndrome. Brugada's syndrome is a genetic anomaly that predisposes someone to have cardiac dysrhythmias, and it usually doesn't happen until they're adults. And it just lays in there insidiously, and then all of a sudden you don't know you had Brugada's syndrome until you drop dead.
It was just terrible to have somebody I love so much be in such a terrible position, and there was nothing that I could do about it because the reports were also negative. They did not point to Jason living, they pointed to Jason dying. There was hope, though, with the hypothermia protocol that he would improve.
Anybody who's on hypothermia, where you take their body temperature way down low, is a very intensive patient.
Basically, the patient is cooled to about 91 degrees, and they're kept that way for an extended period, 24 hours, and then we slowly warm them up. And the whole goal is the preservation of brain function.
Then it's just a wait and see, and all you can do is support them the best you can and then wait and see what happens. You're hoping to see improvement in their brain function. You want to start seeing neurological responses that give you hope they're going to wake up. Jason didn't give us those responses, and it seemed kind of hopeless.
Every call that I got from the neurologist, they kept telling me there's been no improvement, there's been no improvement, there's been no improvement. As a wife, that is devastating to hear. There was no good news for me.
All of us were just, stopped in our tracks. we really became dependent on God, which, we talk about that in Sunday school all the time. You teach lessons on that, but, you had husbands and wives and kids and their parents and everybody, maybe for the first time, or at least for the first time in a while, really, came together and prayed.
I can remember being just the other side of Joplin, probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon or so, and I called Brad and just said, hey, you think you could come unlock the doors and let some folks in if they want to gather and pray? And he said, you bet.
The Facebooks and the texts and everything that was going on, it was very top of mind. It was very paramount.
It spread like wildfire, and because of that, that night, I believe it was 7 o'clock, people just started pouring into the sanctuary at First Baptist.
This wasn't a Sunday, this wasn't a Wednesday night. People stopped what they were doing from their normal routines and came on that evening to pray.
It was a wonderful time in seeing these people of God broken all together, crying out to the Lord and trusting in Him to do, obviously, like everything that we cannot do ourselves, that we have to be dependent on Him for every, literally, heartbeat.
There was people in our church family that was praying around the clock.
We asked people to take a 10-minute time slot and pray each day during that 10 minutes. And we knew that Jason and Buffy and the kids were going to be bathed in prayer 24 hours a day for the foreseeable future.
And everybody was very intense, they were very engaged. And I can remember going, why does it take something like this, to get us engaged in prayer, looking to God for help, for guidance, for direction, to show that, hey, He is sovereign.
"24 hours past the time Jason was supposed to wake up, I was really wondering, God, where is my miracle? And I contacted a friend of mine, and she encouraged me to give it over to the Lord. She encouraged me to seek God's will in this. His will is not always what we prefer, but His will is perfect. And I began to do that, and in doing so, and in prayer and with lots of people praying for me, I was able to ask God to take my desires and make them His desires. And that included me just letting Jason go if Jason needed to go to be with the Lord. Then that's what God wanted for our family. And if God were to restore Jason, I knew that God would restore him completely. But I knew I needed to be okay either way.
Night nurse says, I think he's waking up. And we're all, really, he's waking up?
We had a nurse come out to the ICU waiting room and tell us that Jason had in fact opened his eyes.
And he woke up with a vengeance. It wasn't very long before we were able to go ahead and take him right off the ventilator. And he recovered quickly, and it was seemingly miraculous. That's all I can say.
I think God had a bigger plan for him, and I think he's very blessed. People would say he's lucky. I don't think that's luck. I think that he's blessed.
Being a Christian, it really helped strengthen my own faith. I saw the faith that the people he was surrounded by had. I know that they prayed fervently that whole time, and I just believe God answered that prayer in a miraculous way.
The way in which God is accomplishing what He has decreed and purposed to do involves action, and it involves us, and it involves our thinking and our petitioning Him. He is pleased to answer the prayers of His people that He Himself has burdened them with.
God was at work through what happened to Jason, And one of those was changing my prayer life and changing the prayer life of a lot of other people.
We were praying and we were waiting and we were anticipating. And when God moved, we knew that He moved.
We serve a big God, and because of that, we can go to Him and pray and express our thoughts and our concerns.
Just in awe of our Heavenly Father and what He had done.
It just showcased God's power in such a way that you couldn't help but just smile. I mean, you'd find yourself just sitting there smiling even when you're by yourself.
We're praying to God. We're praying to the one who's in control. I mean, that's our role, right? That's our privilege. You know, we can do that because of what Jesus Christ has done for us. We can pray to God.